Hello and welcome to my Specialization Introduction and Open World Content Guide for the Brewmaster Monk Specialization in World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. If you haven't watched the primer video for this series, please take the time to do that now. There'll be a link in the description below. That video will get you up to speed on what we're doing in these videos and why, and it will apply to all 36 different specialization videos, so you only need to watch it one time. You'll be caught up to speed, and that saves time for me with explaining things and for you with watching the videos, because we get to cut that out of all of these videos. So, go ahead and go do that now. Alright, so we're here on our Brewmaster Monk. And since this is a tanking guide, tanking specialization guide, I want to make it very clear this is not a guide for how to tank in dungeons or raids or anything like that. This is a guide for doing open world content as this tanking specialization, as the Brewmaster Monk. And as such, we will be ignoring and kind of downplaying a lot of the abilities that are very important for tanking in a group, because we're mainly focused on getting out there and killing stuff and getting our quests and farming and stuff like that done. So, just wanted to clarify that before we get started. Now we've got our action bars set up, and we have our talents. You can select these talents, and that will meet the requirements that we laid out in the primer video. And now that we have that set up, we're going to go into our spell book and we're going to sort each of our spells into different categories. I'm not going to go in depth into each spell, but I am going to give you a short description of it so that you can understand why it's in the category it's in. And we're going to kick things off with Blackout Strike. This is part of our core rotation. Breath of Fire is part of our core rotation. Crackling Jade Lightning is a combat utility ability that will shoot out some like Star Wars Emperor looking lightning at a distance, and we can use this to help get targets to come over to us. Detox will remove all poison and disease effects from a target, but we're probably not going to use that much in open world content, so we'll put that on the right side of our combat utility spells. We have Expel Harm. This will draw in the positive energy from our healing spheres, which we'll talk about later, and expel the negative chi, dealing damage to the nearest enemy for 10% of the amount healed. This is something we're not really going to use all that often, but we will put it over here with our combat utility abilities as well. Fortifying Brew. This will turn our skin to stone, increase our maximum health, and increase the effectiveness of our specialization ability and reduce damage we take. So this is a defensive cooldown. Iron Skin Brew will allow us to reduce our damage a little bit. That will go in our combat utility, but we probably won't use it very often out in the open world. Keg Smash is part of our core rotation. Leg Sweep is an AoE stun that goes in our crowd control. Paralysis will incapacitate an enemy. That goes in our crowd control section as well. Provoke is our taunt ability. Obviously, this is something we'd use a lot in dungeons and raids, but out in outdoor content, we probably won't use it that much. So we will put it over here on this right side. The caveat to that is if you're fighting an elite or a rare mob or something, you're probably going to be the one tanking it. So we'll have it here on the bar. That way you can use it if you really need to. Purifying Brew plays into the effects of our specialization. We'll talk about it a little bit more later, but that's also going to be an ability we probably won't use that often out in the open world either. Resuscitate is a resurrection spell that we can use to bring characters back to life, but we can't use it in combat, so that'll go in our miscellaneous section over here. Roll allows us to roll forward. That's a combat utility ability. Spearhand Strike is our interrupt. That goes in our crowd control. Tiger Palm is part of our core rotation. Transcendence will let us leave our spirit behind for 15 minutes, go out and do things, and then we can use Transcendence Transfer to teleport back to where we left our spirit. So it's got some utility there. We can kind of drop it off at town, go do some quests, teleport back before the 15 minutes are over with, and turn in those quests. But that's going to go over here in our miscellaneous section as well. Next we have Vivify. This is a spell we can cast to heal ourselves. That'll go in our combat utility section. We have Zen Meditation, 5-minute cooldown that reduces damage. And we can put that into our defensive cooldown abilities. And then finally we have Zen Pilgrimage. This will teleport us to our home temple, and that's something we'll put in our miscellaneous section. Now, as you can see, we don't have a lot of things in the core rotation here, and we have put a lot of our tanking abilities over on the right side of our combat utility section. That's because, as I said before, we're focused on open world content where we really just want to kill stuff and get our quests done. So let's take a look at the Brewmaster, its resources and its passive abilities, and get a feel for kind of what's going on here. Now, the Brewmaster has, I would say, like 1.5 resources. That sounds weird, but your main resource as a Brewmaster is going to be energy. You start with 100 energy, you spend it on abilities, and then it will passively regenerate during combat. Then you have a small bar here where you are able to generate something called Stagger. Stagger comes from our passive ability that has the same name. It says you shrug off attacks, delaying a portion of physical damage based on your agility, instead taking it over 10 seconds. Affects magical effects at 35% effectiveness. So essentially what this means is that if an enemy were to hit us for 100 damage, we would not instantly take 100 damage. Instead, we would take 10 damage per second for 10 seconds, or however they break it down. Essentially, that 100 damage would instead be done over time. So, our stagger is essentially the amount of damage we have that is going to be dealt to us that hasn't been dealt to us yet. So, if we get hit for 100 and we've taken 40 of it, our stagger would be 60. So we can kind of build up this resource, and the reason that I counted it as a sort of half resource is it's not really a resource that you use in open world content, but is very important for tanking and dungeons and raids and things like that. Now the other passive we have Mystic Touch, which causes our damage to deal 5% increased damage to our target. We have Gift of the Ox. When we take damage, we have a chance to summon a healing sphere that only we can see, and if we move through the sphere, it heals us. We have Celestial Fortune, where we have a chance equal to our critical strike chance to be healed for an additional 65% of the amount healed, which doesn't really come into play unless we're going through a healing sphere or we're casting like Vivify on ourselves. We have Brewmaster's Balance, which just passively increases our armor by 25%. And then we have our Mastery Elusive Brawler. Each time we get hit by a melee attack, or when we hit something with Blackout Strike, which is one of our abilities here, we gain a stacking percentage of dodge until the next time we dodge. So basically this will make us eventually dodge guaranteed. Also, it increases our attack power by a percentage as well, which will help us to deal damage. So now that we've covered that, let's take a look at the core rotation for the Brewmaster Monk. You can see everything here is lit up. That's because everything is either free or costs a certain amount of energy. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to open combat with Blackout Strike. This has a 3-second cooldown, deals damage, and it will give us, a stack of that elusive brawler that we talked about. Then we'll start spending our energy while we're waiting for this to come off cooldown by casting Tiger Palm. Tiger Palm does some damage, and it will also reduce the cooldown of our brews up here that we're not really using by 1 second as well. Then we can also use Keg Smash to deal AoE damage in front of us, and then we can use Breath of Fire, which will deal damage to everything in a cone in front of us. And the reason we use that order is because if we cast Breath of Fire on things that have been hit by Keg Smash, they will burn. They'll have a damage over time debuff put on them that will deal damage to them and make them deal reduced damage to us. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We run up. We're going to hit our Blackout Strike. We're going to start using our Tiger Palm. We Keg Smash. We Breath of Fire. We start hitting Tiger Palm again until our Blackout Strike comes up. We hit that again. Anytime we can hit Keg Smash, we try to do that. And basically, it's just a priority list, right? So we want to hit Blackout Strike, then we want to combo Keg Smash and Breath of Fire if we can, then we just start filling with Tiger Palm if we need to. You're usually able to cast a Keg Smash in between a Keg Smash by itself, and then the next time it comes off cooldown, you'll be able to do Keg Smash plus Breath of Fire. Then we'll be able to do Keg Smash, then we'll wait, and we'll do Keg Smash, Breath of Fire again. And that's it. That is all you're doing as a Brewmaster Monk if you're just trying to kill things out in the open world with the core rotation. So now that we have that down, we're going to take a look at a talent build that's going to work well out in the open world. So let me set this up real quick. All right. So this is the build that I recommend for open world content on the Brewmaster Monk. It's not the only one you can use. It's the one I like and recommend, and the one I'll be demonstrating at the end of this video. So we're going to go through each talent and talk about why it's in the build and how it helps. So first off, Eye of the Tiger. Tiger Palm also applies Eye of the Tiger, dealing nature damage to the enemy and healing us. This is good because we want more damage. As you can tell, we don't have a lot of ways to deal damage. They're all kind of AoE damage for the most part. This will increase our single target damage and help us to kill things. Next, we have Chi Torpedo. This replaces our roll. And I just want to show you that this is our roll by default. It just rolls us forward and then we're good to go. However, with Chi Torpedo, this is going to shoot us forward a good distance. It's going to give us a 30% movement speed buff for 10 seconds, and that movement speed buff will stack up to 2 times. So we can get a 60% movement speed buff. Our torpedo has 2 charges, so if we use one of them, you can see that we're going to shoot forward pretty far, and then we're going to have 30% increased movement speed. If we shoot forward again, then we'll now have 60% increased movement speed for a pretty decent amount of time. So we actually can get an incredibly long movement speed buff from Chi Torpedo, which is really going to help us get from place to place as we need to. Next, we have Spitfire. Our Tiger Palm now has a 25% chance to reset the cooldown of Breath of Fire, which is just going to help us increase our damage because the more we can cast Breath of Fire, the better. The more we can use these damaging abilities, the better, because right now we only have 4 of them. Next, we have Summon Black Ox Statue. This is an ability, a combat utility ability, and what it will do, and we're going to go over here to put it down, is it will summon a Black Ox Statue. This Black Ox Statue will pulse threat to all enemies within 30 yards, and we can also cast our taunt on it to cause it to taunt all enemies near it. So if we're ever in a situation where we feel like we're taking too much damage, or also if we just want to get enemies to come into us so we don't have to chase them down, we could throw out this statue, and then it will take a lot of the damage while we can focus on killing a bunch of enemies, since most of our abilities here that we want to use a lot deal AoE damage. Alright. Then we have Healing Elixir. We're going to put this into our combat utility as well. Aside from Vivify, which we have to cast to use to heal ourselves, this is really the only other way we can heal ourselves as a Brewmaster Monk. We get 2 charges of this elixir. There's a 30-second recharge time, but when we drink one, it'll heal us for 15% of our maximum health. So if we really need to, we can hit both of these and heal up for 30% of our maximum health. Next, we have Rushing Jade Wind. This is something we get to include in our core rotation and give us another button. This has a short cooldown and summons a whirling tornado around us, which deals damage over time to all enemies within 8 yards. So any kind of damage increase we can get will definitely help us out. Finally, we have Blackout Combo. Blackout Combo makes our Blackout Strike influence our other abilities. So when we hit Blackout Strike, it will make our next Tiger Palm deal 100% increased damage. So let's check it out. Tiger Palm, we did about 28,000. If we do Blackout Strike, and then Tiger Palm. We did 113. We got a crit, but that's definitely more damage. There we go, 56,000. Okay. Our Blackout Strike will make our next Breath of Fire have a 3-second reduced cooldown. So normally the cooldown is 15 seconds, but if we use our Blackout Strike, then it'll just have a 12-second cooldown. Our Keg Smash will reduce the remaining cooldown on our brews by 2 seconds. Not a big deal. And our Iron Skin Brew will pause stagger damage for 3 seconds. Also not a big deal. Mainly what we're going to be using this for is so that we can go Blackout Strike into Tiger Palm and get that extra damage. Then we can do our Keg Smash, our Breath of Fire, Blackout Strike, Tiger Palm, Blackout Strike, Tiger Palm. We can use our Rushing Jade Wind. And this is pretty much how our rotation is going to change because of the talents we have, right? We're going to want to Blackout Strike. Make sure that after our Blackout Strike, we Tiger Palm for the extra damage. We're going to continue to want to use our Keg Smash and Breath of Fire, but now, if we have multiple enemies around, we can also use our Rushing Jade Wind to deal damage to them. And while we're waiting for all that stuff to come off cooldown, we can hit Blackout Strike into Tiger Palm for that extra damage. And that's it. That is the rotation for our Brewmaster Monk. And now we're going to take a look really quick at the PvP talents you can select if you're going to toggle on war mode and focus mainly on PvE content. So first up we have Relentless. This turns your Honorable Medallion into a passive ability that will reduce incoming crowd control effects by 20%, so you can set this and forget it, and it's going to help you out no matter what type of crowd control effect you're under. Then we have Hot Trub, which I'm pretty sure should probably be Hot Tub, but I'm not sure there. Purifying Brew deals 30% of your purified stagger damage to all enemies within 10 yards. So what does this do? It makes it so that one of these brews that we are not really using right now can deal some damage for us. So as we're getting this stagger damage, we now have the ability to hit Purifying Brew, which will get rid of 50% of the stagger damage, and it will deal 30% of that damage we've cleared to all enemies within 10 yards, which is not bad. And it gives us the ability to start pushing this as a damage button as well. Next, Eerie Fermentation. You gain up to 30% movement speed and 15% magical damage reduction based on your current level of stagger. So as we're gaining that stagger from being attacked, we will gain movement speed, which is always great, and will reduce damage we take from magic, which is good because we have increased armor, but that doesn't do anything for us as far as magic damage goes. And then finally, Fast Feet reduces the duration of snares by 20%, and you move 15% faster for 3 seconds after being attacked. So if you're trying to get from place to place, or you're running out of a quest area, you're always going to have people throwing spears at you and spells and things, and not only will any sort of snare that they hit you with last 20% less time. Not only will they be reduced by 20%, you'll also get a nice movement speed buff to help you get out of there a lot faster. Alright, so that is the build. We're going to take this out into the open world and show it off against a couple different types of enemies. And so I'm going to cut to that, and I will see you there. Alright, so we're here in Suramar City, and we're going to fly down and try out this build against a couple different types of enemies. So first we'll go down and we'll just do a little bit of one-on-one combat here. So we've got this guy coming. This is where we can use like our Crackling Jade Lightning to get him to come over to us. But remember, we're going to want to hit our Blackout Strike into Tiger Palm, and then Keg Smash. And then after that we would have done our Breath of Fire if we needed to. We can roll to help us get around. Go over to this guy. Blackout Strike. Tiger Palm. Keg Smash. Alright. So let's see if we can gather up a couple of enemies here, because this is really what our character is a little bit better at. Alright, so we'll Blackout Strike, we'll Tiger Palm, Keg Smash, we'll hit our Breath of Fire, and then start doing our Rushing Jade Wind to deal some damage there. And you can see that we're building up a little bit of this stagger damage, but not a whole lot because these outdoor enemies aren't going to do a whole lot of damage to us. So, it's the good part and the bad part about the Brewmaster Monk is that when you're out there doing your questing, you're really not going to take a whole lot of damage. We can always heal up with Vivify. But you also aren't really going to do a whole lot of damage either. So let's see if we can go over here to an elite, and we'll show off kind of what the scenario is when we have to fight an elite enemy. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of ways to increase our damage. Against an elite enemy, we really just have to keep our chain of abilities going here. So we're keeping our Blackout Strike, Tiger Palm going. We're getting our Keg Smash, our Breath of Fire in. And you can see this takes a little bit longer, but we're also taking like almost no damage here. Okay, so what do you really want to do on a Brewmaster Monk? Well, what you're going to want to do, and we're still in combat here, so I guess we'll do this the old-fashioned way with our torpedo. Alright, you're going to want to go around, you're going to want to collect a bunch of enemies, like so, kind of bring in a bunch of guys here, and then you're going to want to start out with your blackouts. You're going to want to do your Keg Smashes, your fires, get this going. As we're taking damage, we're going to be building up that stagger. If we ever feel like we need to, we can hit our Purifying Brew and clear some of that off. We've got our Healing Elixir to help give us some health back if we need it. Don't forget to keep casting your Rushing Jade Winds for that AoE damage. And it takes a little while to get used to being able to do that. As you can see, we didn't really have to activate our defensive cooldowns, but you're going to get used to doing that kind of stuff. And that's really the way you're going to want to quest and do outdoor content on a Brewmaster Monk, because it takes you so long to kill a single target. You really want to be able to utilize that stagger element and kind of bring that into play. Generally, you won't have to, but as you get better with the specialization, that's the kind of stuff you're going to want to do. If you're ever low like this, you know, we can heal up with Vivify. You want to try to heal up with Vivify if you're outside of combat and save your healing elixirs for during combat because they're instant casts. One of the other things that I wanted to show is how to use this Ox. So you saw we were taking a lot of damage there. If we go over and we find another area where we have a bunch of enemies, so let's say this area here, what we can do is we can put our Ox out. Okay, so if we put our Ox out there, our Ox is going to taunt everything, and now we can start dealing a lot of damage to all these enemies without taking all the damage we were before. Alright, so we're going to keep this going. Alright, we can throw out our Ox again. You can always target your Ox and then cast your taunt, and that will get your Ox to taunt everything around it. Now, I'm having the issue here where I'm trying to target something to use my abilities, and there's too many enemies around, so I'm not actually hitting anything. There we go. Alright. Now, there is a bad thing about having this Ox statue out, and that is this thing will just persist and keep taunting things for as long as it lasts. And that means that it's really hard sometimes to get out of combat because of this thing. Alright, so we can see something is still targeting. Okay, it's this guy. Alright. Oh. Alright, well, we'll go over here and we'll take care of this guy. I don't know if we can, actually. I don't think we can get over there. We'll make this guy come to us by running over here. Come on. Oh, I don't think he can get over there either. Okay. Alright, well in that case we will just run away. Let's go ahead and we'll cast some Vivifies. Okay, we're out of combat now. Alright. So that's it. That's how the build works. That's kind of what you're going to want to do. As you can see, even with all the enemies we were taking on, we weren't getting a lot of that stagger damage, which really means that these brews that we have and stuff like that are going to not really come into play that much in open world combat. That's why we put them up here. If you're taking on a really difficult group of enemies, or as you get better at playing the specialization, you can incorporate those in there if you need to, but generally this is what you're going to want to do. So I hope that this has helped you to understand a little bit about the Brewmaster Monk and given you the confidence to be able to get on your own Brewmaster, head out into the open world and start trying out the specialization and seeing if it's something that you like and something you'd like to play in Battle for Azeroth. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and hit the bell. If you want to know when we put up more videos, keep encouraging me to do these kind of videos if you like them. But either way, I hope that you have a lot of fun in Battle for Azeroth, and thank you for watching.